Welcome into SEC Live here on the Voice of College Football. Andrew Miller, Tucker Harlan, Jackson Johnson here on a Wednesday evening. And while this is typically a football channel, it is March. And the first weekend of the NCAA Tournament is set to get underway. The SEC, as always, well represented in the Big Dance. So to break down all the SEC action, we have Max Barr, the basketball aficionado for Southeastern 16, joining the stream to tell us everything we need to know about the SEC going into this tournament. Which teams could make a deep run, which teams are on an upset alert early on. The Aiden Holloway situation in Alabama, obviously a massive story. Definitely a lot of awesome, fun stuff to get into. Max, thanks so much for joining the pod.
Guys, thank you so much for having me. As I said right before we got going here, it is Christmas Eve. I mean, this is the night. There's one more sleep and we're off and running tomorrow. Can't wait.
Oh, yeah. It's going to be a party.
It's definitely one of the best sports weekends of the year. It's not even a question with all of the action we're going to have over these next couple of days. I hate it. I have to go to the dentist during the first game tomorrow. So that'll be not so fun. But hopefully I'll
go to the dentist, did you say, Andrew? Going to watch Chris Jans play?
The root canals were performed on Mississippi State fans this year. So that's that. Yeah, I am going to the dentist. That is appropriate. I did not even make that connection. But
I just heard that and put the two together.
My Bulldogs obviously not in the big dance, but the SEC getting 10 teams in the field, and we definitely want to look at the Florida Gators, a 1 seed, had a chance to compete for the national title. But the biggest story right now surrounding the SEC is the Aiden Holloway situation in Alabama. One of the top players for the Tide, best 3-point shooter on the team, and a guy who's been a big part of what they have done this season, gets arrested over a marijuana possession deal. I don't know all the details there, but it looked like they're trying to get him on a few other things. He had left campus or was off of campus at some point, and we really don't know what the situation is as a whole and how, what I'm assuming he's not going to play for the Tide over the
he's not playing in the NCAA tournament, but beyond that, we don't know.
So that's a big blow to Alabama. Max, right off the bat, I mean, this is a program that obviously just a couple years ago was in the Final Four. They expect to compete at one of the highest levels. That's the expectation under Nate Oates. How does this impact their outlook?
I mean, I don't want to be all doom and gloom, but it's big. It's big time because when you look at how Alabama beats teams, it's not really with lockdown defense. They're just outscoring you. And so if you lose one of your best perimeter scorers, I mean, that greatly impacts your method of winning. I do have some numbers here that are kind of alarming from Caleb Turrentine. So he did the on-off splits. He did the plus-minus of Aiden Holloway on the floor and Aiden Holloway off the floor. So with Phylon, the Phylon and Holloway splits together, they're plus 11.5 plus-minus net rating. In 400 minutes of Phylon on the floor without Holloway, that plus 11.5 drops to plus 3.7. So Phylon, without that spacer next to him, that offensive efficiency, just comes down a little bit. So when you're talking about a team that wins with their offense, losing their main offensive spacer, it's going to impact them. But you get a Texas Tech team looking across from you that they have an All-American also injured. So if you're able to get by Hofstra, you don't have a, unimaginable chance against a Texas Tech team because they're banged up themselves.
I don't want to undersell Akron. Come on, let's not just assume Texas Tech's
going to or Akron. You get a 12.
Yeah, no, you're right. It's definitely a big blow to the Tide, though. Yeah, that's going to be tough in that region as a whole. Why did I just lose the bracket in front of me? There we go. I mean, you got Michigan in there. You got Georgia's obviously not been okay, but it's not the toughest region that there is. I mean, perhaps the Tide could go on a little bit of a run there, but like you said, that's just a really tough blow for them to suffer at this point.
Well, and you got Virginia in that bracket, Iowa State in that bracket. So, I mean, Virginia is not like, Tony Bennett, Virginia. This is the Brian Odom, Virginia. And I got a feeling they're going to be a dog in the years to come.
Yeah, if you're looking from a bottom half of that region, you're looking at Tennessee, Virginia, Kentucky, Santa Clara, Iowa State. If you're a fan base of any of those teams, you're looking at the top half of your quadrant and you're going, I get a 1 seed in Michigan, who their sixth man tore his ACL 2 weeks ago. I get either a five seed in Texas Tech, who their All-American center is out, or I get a 4 seed in Alabama, where their starting shooting guard is out. Not the, there's a lot of chaos that could be happening there with that little Alabama, Texas Tech, Michigan, pod there, just with all the injuries or being arrested and not playing.
Oh man.
Go ahead, Jackson.
This year looks like it could be the best chance for Big Ten to have a natty in college basketball for the first time since 2000. And that was like things that happened in 2000. We had an election and we had Florida, Tennessee being really good in football against one another. And Alex Trebek still had his mustache on Jeopardy.
It's been a while, but it could be the year with the amount of teams that the Big Ten has.
It would not surprise me, but you've seen the Crimson Tide this year, Matt. It's like they've had a lot of come from behind wins, and they've gotten really overly reliant on the three. How do they look to you this year in the big dance?
The thing with Alabama all year was there was kind of that rotating door of injuries. So you had Wrightsell was injured for a little bit. You had Amari Allen that had to work through some injuries. And then you had Taylor Bowen, who he had that hand thing. He kept grabbing his hand every game. He'd be out of game, in a game. And then you had the whole Bediako's playing for a few games. He's in our rotation now. Now he's out of the rotation, and we got to get, back to what we were doing before. The thing with Alabama just couldn't get any sort of flow this year, and they did through that February portion of their schedule. But then you run into Georgia when Georgia hits every 3-point shot they take, it felt like, and you drop to an Ole Miss team who was just their week. So my thing with Alabama all this year was just the lack of consistency. It was just up, down, up, down.
We talked a little bit there about the path for a team like Alabama. You look at the draws for these teams in the SEC. Who would you say got the toughest draw? Who got the easiest draw?
Oh, great question. So the draws that I think I'm like, wow, I don't love that for the SEC. I don't love the draw for Arkansas because I'm picking them Sweet 16. I am. I'm not going to pick Darius Acuff to go out without winning a game or two. But when you look at some of the 5 seeds, you could have gotten a Texas Tech without an All-American. Wisconsin is really good. They've got some great wins under their belt in the Big Ten, and they're kind of like an Arkansas of the Big Ten. Not a whole ton of defense, really good guards, really good shooters. It's just you wouldn't love to see that matchup. And then if you get past them, you get Arizona, who's just been pounding teams. So I was like, man, why do you got to make me pick between Arkansas and Wisconsin in the second round? I don't love that draw. But I honestly, I do have some stats on Florida that I'll bring up, but I like the Florida draw. I like how they get Iowa or Clemson. Clemson's got a 6'11" guy out for the season. Carter Welling, he's a key guy for them. So you have your lack of size there for Clemson. And then Iowa's been an undersized team all year in the Big Ten. They've really had a tough time dealing with size. I like that. And then you get Vanderbilt, who I know Vanderbilt has given them some issues. I know they have. But if you guys watched that game in the SEC tournament, I was at that game. And it was just one of those days where you're just like, okay, it didn't matter who they were playing. They were going to beat any team. They're hitting mid-range jumpers. Their big men are combining for 5+ threes. You know those games. Those games just happen. I do like the path for Florida.
Yeah, one thing I wanted to ask about Florida, because it's been a talking point all season with just certain analysts highlighting it, what's returned from this team and what hasn't. Obviously, the one that went to the national championship, the front court has been phenomenal, and it's arguably the best in the country just with the versatility of those guys. But the backcourt, they just haven't been able to figure it out this year the way they have in years past. So I know we talked a little bit there about who they're going to have to play against, but I mean, because we saw it happen on Saturday against Vanderbilt. They got to play Vanderbilt again, and Vanderbilt, I would say, is significantly better in that department with a healthy Duke Miles. So, I mean, Max, how far do you think they could go without that letting them down? and getting them in trouble again.
That's the big kicker. It's that backcourt and it's the shooting inconsistency.
Yeah.
And so I actually dug into this today. And so I like them to win a first. I don't think they're going to get knocked off real early. I think that front court and just the size, the rebounding, the defense, that travels on a neutral court. And I trust that to get them by the first few games. But I really don't like them to win it all. I know there's some people out there that are picking them to win it all, and I really would advise against that. Now, anything can happen. It's March Madness. If 2 years ago I came on here and I said, hey, guys, take San Diego State to the championship game and take Florida Atlantic to the Final Four, you'd be like, Max, what are you talking about? And then I'd look like a genius. So you can always do whatever you want in March. But Ken Pom goes back to 1997, all right? So this is a stat since 1997. So basically the last almost 30 years, it's probably 27, 28 tournaments. The worst three-point shooting percentage for a national champion ever, well, back to 1997, is 32.9%. 2011 UConn did that. They were 32.9%. That was the worst ever. Florida's at 30.8, a full 2% worse than that. They would be the worst three-point shooting champion in the last 30 years by over 2%. It's doable. It is doable. But usually when you shoot that poor, you're going to come into a game where there's also a front court that's pretty dang good, and there's also a defense, and that shooting just doesn't get it done. So I do like Florida to make a little bit of a run. Guys, we watched them down the stretch. They're dominant. They got great players, but historically, teams that shoot as poorly as they just trip up eventually.
Well, and I want to talk a little bit about the West region with you for a little bit, Matt.
Yeah.
Because it's like Arizona, this is supposed to be their year to make it to the Final Four, right? But the thing with Arizona, and this is something I've noticed, this when they had Sean Miller, right? And this what they've had over the first few years of the Tommy Lloyd era. They always come up short of going to a Final Four, right? It's like Wile E. Coyote just kind of falling off the cliff trying to chase the Roadrunner. Is this the case where Arkansas can just kind of take advantage of that? If they're getting through their first round game, getting through Wisconsin, could they beat Arizona this year?
They definitely can. I probably won't pick it. Just because I think that Arkansas-Wisconsin game is going to be fireworks. But I'm not going to sit here and tell you any one seed can't get knocked off. There's holes in all the one. Last year, the one seeds just felt rock solid. You had Janai Broome in an old Auburn team. You had Walter Clayton in a beast front court with an Elijah Martin guard that just went to the Final Four. You had the best Houston three-point shooting team Kelvin Sampson's ever had with Jawan Roberts, who had been there for 6 years. You had Cooper Flagg. The one seeds were just unreal last year. This year, you got Duke down 2 starters. You got Michigan, who their 6th man just tore his ACL, and LJ Kaysen. Jaden Bradley for Arizona had to get X-rayed on his wrist during the Big 12 championship game. And I just gave you the stat on Florida would be the worst shooting team in the last 30 years to win the national championship. I'm not going to sit here and tell you any one seed can't get knocked off. They're all vulnerable.
Of some of those teams within the SEC, you talked a little bit about the Gators, but obviously we just talked about Arkansas. I mean, who is somebody else that you look at as most likely to be a dangerous team in this tournament? And, I know we had a question a little bit later talking about some of the lower seeded teams, but we can go anywhere of the SEC. Is there someone that stands out as that team's poised to make a run this March?
There's 2 teams I like for this question. I'll give you one kind of higher seed and then one maybe a little more of an upset. So Tennessee gets the SMU Miami play-in, the winner of that, and then they've got to probably play Virginia unless Wright State beats them. Now, I'm a big fan of Virginia. I think they're really good. I really like Ryan Odom. And they got 2 7-footers, not just 1 7, they got 2 7-footers that can protect the rim. And their 4-man is an international European big that's really good. They got size. But they don't have a single win over a top 5 seed in this tournament. Their highest seeded win is Louisville. And in that game, they didn't have Mikel Brown. So you could even put a little asterisk next to that. So I'm a big fan of Virginia, but when you look at their season, they don't have a top 5 seeded win. I think there is a scenario where Tennessee beats an SMU or a Miami, Ohio, and they catch a Virginia team maybe on a bad shooting night, or it gets close and you got an NBA level talent in Nate Ament. I'll probably pick Virginia, but that is a 3 seed that kind of compared to Illinois, Michigan State, and the Zags, they have the least quality of high wins. And then I like Texas. BYU doesn't have Richie Saunders, All-American. They do have, obviously, one of the best players in the country in A.J. DeBansa, but one of those play-ins always, an 11 always seems to get a little momentum going. They just played absolutely terribly against NC State and found a way to win. And BYU's looked pretty pedestrian as of late. So if there's a SEC team that's seated a little bit lower, I think Texas gets a nice setup there having BYU already injured.
Andrew hinted at some of these lower seeds just a second ago, and we won't go into in depth on all of these matchups in the 8-9s and 7-10s, but they're naturally what you gravitate toward in this first round. One that kind of jumped out at me, Max, though, is this St. Mary's and Texas A&M matchup, because it is just so different how those two teams play basketball. You look at buckyball, it's fast, it's a lot of pressing, it's mass substitutions. Whereas you look at Randy Bennett's St. Mary's, that's a team that, traditionally is Gonzaga's foil just in terms of how it goes about its business. We'll beat you in the 60s and maybe early 70s. We won't try to score 90 to outrun you. I'm just curious, how do you envision that game playing out? Because that's one that jumped off the page at me.
It's one of the hardest games to pick because of that contrast in styles. Some of the games that you get a similar style and you can kind of just feel like, all right, well, I just think they're a little bit better at doing what they do. But a game like this, where you have complete opposite ends of tempo, it's really hard to get a feel for it. Honestly, a lot of it comes down to who plays well in the first 10 to 15 minutes. Because whoever's playing with that lead usually can be a little bit more comfortable at their tempo. If St. Mary's is out to a 6-point lead and they're just grinding this thing down, and there's not the open looks for Texas A&M like there is in the chaotic SEC up and down. There's not a ton of great defense this year in the SEC. You could see St. Mary's just you've got Texas A&M on your bracket and you're just pulling your hair out, defending for 30 seconds after 30 seconds of long possessions. But on the flip side, if you get Texas A&M hitting threes, Rashawn Agee is too athletic for their bigs. They're pulling the bigs out. They're moving around. I don't know if I trust St. Mary's to mount a 10-point comeback with how slow that tempo is. So I have St. Mary's, but I would not be surprised at all if Texas A&M is able to kind of just out-athlete St. Mary's there.
Well, one thing's for sure, like if St. Mary's was to win against Texas A&M, which, I mean, that game looks like a toss-up, it would basically show people that, hey, we're the class of the West Coast Conference now once Gonzaga's gone. I mean, like whoever's going to be the second best team in the West Coast Conference, it's basically going to feel like Jack Lemon and all those guys on Glengarry Glen Ross, trying to make sure they've got the leads and making sure that they've got the most sales to keep their job.
Like, that's a good point.
Oh yeah, because that's what it's equivalent to for the West Coast Conference. But just like looking at the Texas Longhorns, like could they make a Cinderella type run this year? Like just like go be another one of those first 4 teams that just goes on a surprise run, because we've seen it a lot before. Like, I'm not saying they go as far as like Final Four, because like knowing Sean Miller's history, we've never seen a Final Four team from Sean Miller. He just falls off a cliff anytime that happens. But if this were to happen, that would be pretty big in Austin, because I mean you would be going through an injured BYU team, you'd be getting through a pretty good Gonzaga team, Purdue or Miami or Missouri. Then Arizona or Arkansas. Like, it'd be wild.
I think if you want to take Texas to win 2 games, there's not much of a better 6-3 setup than BYU, already pretty injured, and the Zags, who are without Braden Huff, they're already injured. So if you do want to take an 11 to beat a 6 seed and a 3 seed, why not take the one that's playing 2 injured teams? It's not a bad setup.
Kind of the flip side of a lower seeded team making a deep run. What we always look for in March are the upsets. Is there an SEC team that's on upset alert? And I mean, we can't not mention Kentucky. We have to discuss Kentucky's chances against Santa Clara. Thoughts just overall within the SEC, who's on upset alert, and then specifically what do you see from Kentucky against another West Coast Conference team?
Yeah, for upset alert, I think the low-hanging fruit there is Alabama, just because there's a lot of commotion going on and they got to play without a key player. And I'll be honest, Hofstra's not a bad team. They've got the player of the year in their conference at guard. He's really good. And Speedy Claxton's their coach. He played in the NBA. He's just like a younger, fun style coach. They're not a pushover. They beat Syracuse. They beat Pitt. They only lost to UCF by 4. So they're not just some mid-major that didn't play anyone. They're not bad. So the low-hanging fruit there would just be to say Alabama. But Kentucky Santa Clara has the nation split. It really does. I feel like everyone in kind of SEC country is like, are you kidding me? Santa Clara? You're gonna pick Santa Clara to beat Kentucky? And then a lot of the rest of the country is saying, listen, Santa Clara's got a guy projected to go first round in the NBA draft. Like, they're not bad. I'm going Kentucky though. I cannot pick a non-Gonzaga WCC team to beat Kentucky in the first round. I can't bring myself to do it. Will it shock me if it happens? Maybe a little bit. I would be a little shocked because what happens to the conversation around Mark Pope and his tournament success if you can't beat Santa Clara in the first round? So I think it's must win for Kentucky here. I don't really see them getting beat.
Oh, it would be wild.
It would be chaos in the streets.
Oh man, like chaos in Lexington, Kentucky.
Burning couches. Take a page out of the Tennessee fans book there. Just burn your couches in the streets.
Might as well play that Cash for Gold song from South Park in the background while the Kentucky fans are rioting.
It would be one thing if it was a high major 10 seed, right? If it was, UCF, or if say there who's a 9 seed from a high major, like in Iowa, St. Louis,
or they're not high major, but they're close. They're close.
But like I'm saying, like a known March Madness name, a Villanova, an Ohio State, and then they beat Kentucky. It's like, all right. But the fact that Santa Clara, they just haven't had a lot of postseason success lately. It's a random name that pops up in March. If Kentucky's to drop to them, chaos ensues.
Yep.
I know I mentioned St. Louis just a second ago, but I'm somewhat intrigued by that matchup with Georgia just because of where St. Louis has been. Like, they're kind of in that same conversation with like Miami of Ohio in terms of just being that really fun, attractive mid-major this season that everybody's gotten into. And then Georgia, honestly, is a very fun team to watch in the SEC. One of the few that's capable of playing at the same pace that Alabama and, Texas A&M and some others have in the league this year. What are your thoughts on what could be a really intriguing 8-9 matchup there between the Billikens and the Bulldogs?
Oh, intriguing is the right word. You got St. Louis, who they shoot on the season. They're second in the country in 3-point shooting percentage. As a team, they shoot 40.5% as a team. Just bananas. They can light it up. They only lost one game up until February 13th. And now they've gone 4-4 on the last 8. So they kind of hit a skid. So to pick this game, you're kind of picking, okay, am I going to pick St. Louis finds kind of their January form where they were just killing teams? Or is this 4-4 skid on the way out? Did St. Louis kind of get figured out a little bit and they've lost their edge? Whatever your answer to that question is, I think picks your 8-9 matchup for that, because Georgia is very volatile as well. They shoot a lot of threes. They don't always make a ton. You had the big Georgia-Alabama win where they made 1 million threes, and then they go into the SEC tournament and the threes don't fall. So I think your answer to Georgia-St. Louis is really more of a question of how do you feel about St. Louis? Do you think they find that early season form, or do you think they've been figured out?
I know we've been going a little bit long here, but I just want to make sure we just make sure we hit everybody in the league. Quick thoughts on Vanderbilt and Missouri, their chances in the bracket.
Yeah, so Vanderbilt, everyone sees McNeese and gets a little scared. It's good. It's. I feel like McNeese has kind of slid into that, like in the 2010s. It was kind of like a Wichita State. It was a VCU where it's just like you see that name in the bracket and you're like, oh boy, they usually win. But the thing about McNeese is they get a ton of their points from turnovers. They're one of like a top 5 turnover forcing team in the country. But guess who doesn't turn the ball over? Tyler Tanner. And having Duke Miles back also to have another ball handler. I really like it. I think people think it's a bad matchup for Vanderbilt. I think it's a bad matchup for McNeese. I think they wanted to get a St. John's or a team without a true point guard that might cough the ball up a lot. They got Tyler Tanner and Duke Miles. It's just, I think it's a bad matchup for McNeese. I like Vandy to win a game, and then that game against Nebraska, flip a coin. Or if they get Troy, I mean, I don't know. But Nebraska's been kind of struggling on the way out here.
Yeah, like Nebraska, like after their 20-0 start, they basically ended the stretch at sits and sits. It's like I don't even know if they're going to win. This year's going to be the year where they win their first tournament game in school history.
You can put Nebraska in that St. Louis category. Is teams that were just near unbeatable for the first 2-3 months of the season and then really started to drop some games on the way out. So it's hard to trust. So I do like Vanderbilt to win a game, probably 2. And then, hey, you just saw Vanderbilt, Florida, their game in that one as well. And then for Missouri, this is a tough one. This is a real tough one for me. With Missouri, I think they're such a good team when they're at their best. I think they have a high ceiling. When Missouri's not turning the ball over, they've got a lot of size, they've got shooting, they've got depth, but they also have a pretty low floor. And there's a bunch of games where it's a close game at the end, and it's up for grabs. And you get done with a Missouri offensive possession, you're just like, what are we doing here, guys? We needed a good shot here. So like, I don't trust Missouri in a close game. That's my problem. I think they're the better team. If you look at the roster talent and the depth, I think there's more depth on Missouri. I just don't know if I trust them in a close game to pull it out.
So just to kind of close out here, for the teams across the SEC, who do you see making the second weekend? And if you got one team you think makes the deepest run, who would that be?
Yeah, so obviously Florida, I think Vanderbilt does get out of the first weekend. They're 9-1 on the season against teams with a top 100 3-point rate. So basically just like teams that shoot a ton of threes. Vanderbilt's 9-1 against them. They pair up well when it's guards against guards. A lot of the time it's been Vandy's guards that end up winning. So I like Florida and Vanderbilt to get out. And then I also have Arkansas getting out. So I think there's 3 teams I feel real good about getting out of that first weekend. And then I think between Kentucky, Tennessee, Alabama, Texas A&M, I think between all of them, I think you get another. So if you had to ask me, 10 teams in, I think we get 4 out of that first weekend. Got a nice chunk of that Sweet 16 represented by the SEC.
Fantastic. Yeah. Max, we really appreciate you taking the time join on. And there's his Twitter handle or X. Go follow him there. Subscribe to Southeastern 16. And why don't you tell everybody about – I'm sure Southeastern 16, you guys are going to have some great content coming everybody's way over these next few weeks or month, really.
Yeah, we've got prediction videos pumping out. If you wanna get a little extra knowledge or a little preview on a game that you're thinking about tweaking on your bracket, check us out, Southeastern 16. That's where we're at.
Tell your friends, your family, and the cashiers at Publix about the magic that you'll see Max Barr and friends creating on Southeastern 16. Tune in for more.
Max, thanks so much for taking the time. We really appreciate it.
Guys, anytime for the rest of March as well, just let me know and I'm game.
Sounds fantastic. Thanks so much.
Thanks, guys.
All right, Jackson. I'm pretty sure, Easter's on its way, which means, as you like to say, the Easter Beagle is on its way.
The Easter Beagle and the Easter Bunny are teaming up.
Both of them teaming up. If you were, to ask said Beagle and Bunny what you wanted for Easter, what would you tell them that you want in your basket?
Well, that's a very good question because, I would want a Voice of College Football t-shirt, definitely a polo shirt, especially to look nice, to get wasted away again from Margaritaville during the spring break. And you've got the Voice of College Football trucker hats, the dad hats, and of course we've got the coffee mugs. We've got the coffee mugs for each of the teams, like Tennessee, for example. There you go, little tumbler cup, game day mug, can cooler, especially show off to all your friends. And what do we have here? We've got some stuff for Alabama. We've got some stuff for Auburn. We've got some stuff for Florida. Now, I don't know where is the... Oh, here we go. Oklahoma stuff. Little stuff for Zeno Zone. And the little Fever mug, game day mug, can cooler. Get those out. Especially show support to the Sooner Smith couple, who host the Sooner Smith Show on Mondays on 7 p.m. Central on Oklahoma at the Voice of College Football. And a huge congratulations to Chad and Tierney Smith as they have their first child here on this earth.
Welcome to the March 12th Club.
There we go.
It's a great club to be in.
There we go.
Godfather letting us know he wants eggs in his basket.
Oh, there you go.
But yeah, check out all the great merch at vocfb.com/shop. And hey, while we're at it, we also do want to mention you can catch SEC Live and all of your favorite content from the Voice of College Football Network on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts from. Obviously, we love to have you guys come and join, be a part of the YouTube action. Love the viewership here. Get those likes up. We didn't say it off the bat. Like, subscribe, have notifications on, all those wonderful things. But we do understand in your busy lives, you can't always join us live. And sometimes it's more convenient to go catch the show afterwards on the podcast. So, still go to YouTube and give us a like. But then go back and you can stream your shows wherever you listen to your podcast from. Shifting gears a little bit into some football talk, we did have SEC win totals released for the season. And I do not have a graphic pulled up or anything, but if either of you wants to search for one from our friends at FanDuel, we'll run through some of these real quick. Alabama over under 8.5, and this is just alphabetical order. Arkansas 4.5, Auburn 6.5, Florida 7.5, Georgia 9.5, Kentucky. I closed that 4.5, LSU 8.5, Mississippi State 4.5, Missouri 6.5, Oklahoma 7.5, Ole Miss 7.5, South Carolina 6.5, Tennessee at 7.5, Texas at 9.5, Texas A&M at 8.5, and the Vanderbilt Commodores rounding us out with a win total of 6.5. We thought a fun thing to go for today was each of us, we're not going to break down every single team. We may do our official picks on this as we get into the offseason. Obviously, these lines are going to change over the next several months leading up to the college football season. So we'll do a deeper dive later on. But early thoughts on some of these lines, we figured each of us would pick an over and an under. If we were to call it right now, where we stand on these. So we'll start off being the optimist. And if we're going to go with overs, and Tucker, I'll go to you first. What's of these SEC win totals, what stands out as I see that as an over hitting?
Low-hanging fruit here, but Georgia's sitting at 9.5 right now. That feels like an easy one. I look at their schedule. Georgia Tech at home, could be a challenging game. You never know. Georgia Tech has played them well under Brent Key, but if it's in Athens, then I don't really like Georgia Tech's odds at winning. And also, they just don't beat Georgia very often. So figure they probably get the sweep in non-conference play. And then I look at the road games, like Arkansas on the road. I don't see that happening for Arkansas that early in the season. Alabama on the road, I don't know, maybe that's challenging. Maybe the curse is still there for Kirby Smart. Obviously, if Ole Miss has Trinidad Chambliss, we know they're dangerous, so you could chalk that up as a potential loss. I don't see it with South Carolina on the road as a loss, though. And then I look at the home games like Oklahoma, Vanderbilt. I guess Florida's not technically a home game. That game is in Atlanta, which might as well be a home game. And then you got Missouri at home. So I don't really look at any of those games as being losses for Georgia at home. Because Bama is the last team to do it since South Carolina in 2019 to beat Georgia in Athens.
Yep.
So maybe you see them drop Ole Miss and Alabama on the road for the second time in 3 years and fall to 10-2. But you know what? That's still more than 9.5. So I just don't see a way around Georgia winning fewer than 10 games this season.
It feels like if you're going off of, from a point spread standpoint, those are the only 2 games where they might be underdogs.
Yeah.
And it wouldn't be by more than probably a field goal for either of them, I would guess. And they could be favored in Oxford. They could be favored in Tuscaloosa. Those are both teams that are going to have some question marks and a lot of turnover. So, yeah, I think taking Georgia to win 10 regular season games, obviously – it's a different age in the SEC going to 9 conference games. That kind of dropped everybody's win total by about half a game at least, I would imagine, from where you would typically have these teams. But still, betting on Georgia to win 10 regular season games, which they have done, excluding the COVID year, every season under Kirby Smart except his first. I think that's correct. Somebody could fact check me, but I don't think they've gone worse than 10-2 any of these years. Again, COVID year notwithstanding. It feels like a pretty safe bet that the low end is still probably a 10-2 type season. I think that's a smart one. Jackson, if you were to pick an over, where are you going?
I would obviously go with Alabama at the over 8.5 because that feels too low on Alabama. Honestly, 8.5 wins. I don't think the odds makers are seeing the improvements that you're going to see from offensive line and what you're going to be seeing from this amazing wide receiver group of Ryan Coleman Williams and Latsier Brooks. And you're going to see a breakout game, plenty of breakout games from Sedarian Morgan. But also, I'm just kind of bringing up the schedule as well. The September slate, I think Alabama's got revenge on their mind against the Florida State Seminoles. And I think they can get the job done there. I mean, yes, South Carolina's coming to Tuscaloosa, but the thing is, Alabama has had a rough time with South Carolina over the past 2 years, right? They got lucky 2024. Alabama needed a game-winning drive in 2025 to basically get through the Gamecocks. But I think Alabama can get it done there. But Mississippi State, sorry, Andrew.
Loss.
Yeah, that's a win for the Crimson Tide there. But, the lost territory could come anywhere between Georgia, Tennessee, and Texas A&M, honestly. Probably LSU as well, early November. But to be honest, I could see Alabama winning against Georgia. But Tennessee, to me, looks like a toss-up because of the fact that Knoxville has just been very dangerous for the Crimson Tide, as Alabama's not won in Knoxville since 2020. We all know what happened 2022 and 2024. And, you got Texas A&M coming over to your backyard. Emotion's going to be high, especially with Isaiah Horton coming back over Tuscaloosa since he left for Texas A&M, greener pastures in College Station, I guess. But after LSU, now LSU seems to be a team that's going to be having a breakout year. Lane Kiffin's first year, a better one than they've ever had under Brian Kelly, but we don't know what year LSU's going to be having. But Vanderbilt, Auburn, Chattanooga, that's an easy slate right there. But it's the first trip to Nashville since that upset loss in 2024. Do I think Alabama can beat Vanderbilt this year? Absolutely. That looks like a sure win right there, but not as big a sure win as it will be against Auburn in Tuscaloosa, because Auburn's not beaten Alabama in Tuscaloosa since 2020. And I can definitely see Alabama just giving another smackdown victory over Auburn.
Yeah, look, obviously we poke a little fun at the Bama fan picking a Bama over, but to be fair, I think it's probably the correct move. And I do think this Bama team has quite a few questions, but I also like quite a few spots. They're one of the few SEC teams I've really dove deep into, which, hey, like I said, we're kind of making early opinions, so these opinions can change on all these teams.
True.
But I do think Bama, despite a lot of overturn, I definitely like it at a few key spots. And at an 8.5 win total, I mean, they can go 9-3 and hit the over. And, it's really, it comes down to that 4-game stretch in the middle of the season. Home versus Georgia, at Tennessee, home against Texas A&M, and then at LSU. Theoretically, you could lose 3 of those games and still hit the over. Now, you would have to be perfect everybody else. You couldn't slip up anywhere. But I also don't think it's out of the question that Bama just splits those games, and then you would get wiggle room to take a loss somewhere else. So yeah, I think 9-3 is probably 9-3, 10-2 are probably your most likely outcomes for Alabama if we were just looking at it right now. 8-4, it's certainly possible. I get where that win total comes from, but I think there's a good chance at the Tide being able to beat that total. If I were to take one, and I'll go with the Missouri Tigers, over under of 6.5. And, Missouri's a team, I know they're losing a lot defensively and they kind of just get overlooked quite a bit, but you have Ahmad Hardy coming back. You have Austin
huge.
Simmons coming in at QB, who was a very talented player. Keep in mind all the hype that was on Austin Simmons going into last season. And I don't think he's just not a good quarterback. Caden Lee following him over at receiver. So you've got some fun pieces there on the offense. But I also just look at the schedule. The non-conference is Arkansas Pine Bluff at Kansas, and it's Kansas, post Jalen Daniels leaving the program versus Troy. I feel like you can go 3-0 in the non-con. At Mississippi State, home versus Florida, home against Texas A&M, going to be very tough. But at Ole Miss, at Arkansas, very winnable. Home versus Texas. At Georgia, tough. But home games against Kentucky and a home game against Oklahoma. I mean, I think Mississippi State, Florida, Kentucky, and Arkansas are all incredibly winnable games. If you won all of those and you won your non-con, that's 7 wins. I also think, Missouri's a good enough team to be able to spring an upset. And look, I mean, Eli Drinkwitz has this program at a point. They've been like an 8-4 type team consistently for several years now. I don't think they're going to regress back to 6-6 all of a sudden. He's done a really good job improving the talent on that roster year after year. They're a consistently solid football team is I think more likely to jump up and have a big year than have a fallback season. Maybe not so much this season specifically, but I think they can do better than 6-6.
Obviously.
I like Mizzou to go over that 6.5 total. Any thoughts?
Yeah, like 6.5 just feels way too small, Missouri. And again, it shows the odds makers have not really watched a lot of Missouri over the past few years, where it's like since 2022, we always see Missouri just kind of, telling everybody in the preseason, pay attention to us. We're a good team. Like we can basically have a say in who gets in the SEC title game and who doesn't, and basically who gets in the playoffs or not. I mean, they seem like a pretty good team, but I mean, maybe not like the Chase Daniels teams from 07 and 08, but still a good team all the same. It's like it would be wise not to underestimate the Missouri Tigers and what Eli Drinkwitz has cooking it over at Missouri.
Yeah, I can't imagine them just falling off this year, like they have in some years under previous regimes, like I guess Gary Pinkel that final season when he was there, they went from SEC East champs to going 1-7 in the SEC East to the very next year.
Oh, there's like a hunger strike going around at campus that year.
There was some crazy political stuff going on there. I forget what exactly was going on at that time, but they were having some issues up there circa 2015.
And he, announced they had like a small diagnosis of Parkinson's disease.
Yeah, and then the Barry Odom tenure, kind of what you talked about there. They had like an 8-win season mixed in, but kind of like a 6-6, 5-7 type team.
Because they went 6-6 that last year and went like 1-5 against SEC East teams, including a loss at 3-9 Derek Mason Vanderbilt. I do remember that year. Yeah, but
to our point, Drinkwitz has the program in a much better spot now. Do I think they're incapable of going 6-6? No, just about no. Outside of a few of the teams at the very top of the league, I guess anybody can drop down and have a year like that. But I'm going to bet on them right now to kind of maintain where they've been and put together a solid year. Now, if we're going to go to the negative side, and Tucker, we'll go back to you. Who stands out as like a early under that you would lean towards?
So I don't think they miss it by much. But I think Arkansas goes under 4.5. I just look at all these coaching hires in the SEC this season, and that one to me has the least amount of juice. Like John Sumrall's bringing toughness back to Florida. Will Stein is apparently getting all these recruits to look at Kentucky that haven't in the past. We've seen what they've done in the portal. Auburn is at least bringing in an exciting offense. We know what's coming to LSU with Lane Kiffin, and then Pete Golding. If he has Trinidad back, then yes, there's lots of juice there. I don't get that same feeling with Arkansas this year, and it's going to be tougher for a team like that to rebuild in this era of the SEC. And I'm just looking at the schedule now. You can pencil in the wins over North Alabama and Tulsa. You're at Utah. I understand there's a new coach at Utah that was promoted from within in Morgan Scalley, but they're returning the quarterback, Devin Dampier. So you would figure that Utah would be fine at home in that game. So that's 2-1 out of conference, which is already not a great start. We discussed that Georgia game just a second ago. I don't think they win that game at home on September 19th. You're at Texas A&M. Tennessee is somewhat cursed against Arkansas, although I don't really see it this year, though. I'm not seeing it. Again, maybe that could change because this game was unfortunately in about the same place as it was 2 years ago when Tennessee lost out there. But Vanderbilt, how well is Jared Curtis playing at that point in the season? And, the fact that you have to go on the road, not that Vanderbilt's a challenging environment to play in, but you get the idea. They're cursed against Mizzou. They're awful against Mizzou since Mizzou joined the SEC. And I certainly don't think this is a year where they can pull it off. Maybe South Carolina and Auburn. And that would, both of those teams would have to not be having good years in order for me to be fully confident in picking Arkansas to win those games. Because especially Auburn, I just don't see that one jumping out at the page at me right now. And then you end the year with Texas on the road and then LSU. I don't see them winning either of those games. So, again, I don't think they miss it by a ton. Maybe, 3-9, 4-8 this year for Arkansas. The slightest of improvements from what they did a season ago. But I don't see the same kind of juice in that hire of Ryan Silverfield that I've seen in some of these other ones across the SEC.
I'm right there with you. And we talked about it the day the hire was announced. It was not a hire that inspired me a lot, given the fact that, look, I don't think he's a bad football coach, but I think he
could win the big game at Memphis.
Well, yeah, his time at Memphis, he takes over for Norvell when the program was rolling. They immediately decline, and he did not get Memphis back up towards the top of the conference until all the other big boys in the American left for the Big 12. And still has not fully broken through into a big-time season at a program that has massive advantages over the rest of that conference because of all the FedEx money. So now you go to an Arkansas program where you do not have those same advantages in football. I didn't see the big moves in the offseason roster-wise to think that they suddenly got a whole lot stronger. I definitely need to take a deeper dive at Arkansas, but I think that's a team I was interested in. I saw somebody had a SEC power rankings early, and they had Arkansas ahead of both Kentucky and Mississippi State. And Kentucky, I don't get that one at all, given all the momentum around the program. Mississippi State, I understand where the perspective comes from. I would have stayed. Yes, I'm biased. I would have stayed ahead of Arkansas right now. And I have doubts about the program. Believe me, I'm not super high on this state team. But I feel better about the roster they have in place than what I've seen so far out of Arkansas. So it feels like a team that right now, if I'm picking last in the league, it's probably them. We'll see. I mean, maybe Silverfield makes us all look like a bunch of idiots, but I'm kind of right there with you. Jackson, what's an under that sticks out to you?
Oh, man. This season, I believe it's going to be – I've been flipping a coin between Auburn and Florida, but I like Florida to do better than Auburn right now. I've got Auburn as my candidate as the under.
Just a full-on Bama fan over on Alabama, under on Auburn.
But in all seriousness, though, you look at where they have Georgia and Alabama, where they have to go on the road to both those schools, right? They got what they wanted. They wanted Georgia to be away from November. They move it over to October. It's not worked out like they wanted to. Not a single win against Georgia or Alabama, right? Obvious that they're not going to win those games. I don't see them winning against Ole Miss, right? Now week 1 against Baylor in the Aflac Kickoff Classic, that's going to be a teller of where things are going to be for Auburn in 2026. And Florida, now that's going to be a real tell sign of where both teams are going in the 2026 season. But October, just looking at that slate, and Vanderbilt, I'm not sure they'll beat Vandy, but we'll see. Even though it's at Auburn, we'll definitely wait and see. Because you got to go to Tennessee on October 3rd. You got the bye week, but is it going to help? We'll see. You got to go to Georgia. You got LSU coming to your backyard. And you got to go on Halloween night to play Ole Miss. Now, November seems a little bit easier because we've got toss-ups between Auburn and Arkansas at Auburn, Alabama, November 7th. November 14th gets Mississippi State between Auburn and Mississippi State. Then you got that cupcake game against Sanford the week before rivalry week, which will probably be on Disney Junior, or some people probably advocate for it to be on Disney Junior instead of SC Network. And then you got the Iron Bowl, where Auburn has not won in Tuscaloosa since the famous comeback game on Black Friday of 2010 on November 26th of 2010. This is going to be an interesting slate to see what's going to happen for Auburn. Is it going to be more of the same, or is it going to be a better road ahead in Jordan Hare? We will definitely wait and see. They say that it's been really good. The portal's been really good for the Auburn Tigers for this season, it seems like. But we have to see. I don't think 2026 is... Right now, it looks more the same. The Hugh Freeze era was disastrous. But we'll wait and see what happens with Auburn. But I don't like where things are at for the Tigers.
I definitely think it's questionable for this year. And I like Alex Golesh quite a bit. I like Byron Brown, even though everybody's clowning his throwing motion, which everybody's just telling themselves for not watching G5 football, because he's always throwing the ball that way. It's a wacky motion, but that's what he does. I don't think suddenly because he's in the SEC it won't work. Maybe it won't, but it's just he's a good player. I'm going to trust him to perform. But what does the offensive line look like when it's a lot of I think some G5 transfers coming up from, I know at least the centers coming from South Florida. We talked a lot about Auburn defensively. I know they got a couple defense, Deshaun Womack coming over from Ole Miss. That was a good pickup for them on the D line, but we remember the conversation. The whole idea around keeping DJ Durkin on staff was to keep what was an awesome Auburn defense in place. And I know they still got some guys at backer, and there's decent players there. They had a lot of guys leave as well. A lot of talented pieces on that Auburn defense that are no longer going to be a part of that team. So it's kind of like, okay, are you going to be as strong on that side of the ball as you were a year ago when the thought process was, hey, we got this side fixed, just bring in a guy who can score points, we're going to win a bunch of games. May not be quite that simple. I don't think they're going to suck defensively, but I also don't know that the offense right away is just going to be completely incredible. The wide receivers are fine, but O-line is going to be a question for me for sure. So, and you're right, that schedule, road trips to, Tennessee, Georgia, Ole Miss, and Alabama, plus you got LSU in there, you're going to be probably significant underdogs in all of those games. Maybe not, Tennessee, maybe more like within a touchdown, but still you would think the Vols probably would be favored. If you lose all of those, and I'm not saying they will, but if you do lose all of those, you have to go undefeated in every other game in order to go over on that win total.
I don't see a single win in the month of October for Auburn. I just don't.
It's a very, very difficult slate for sure. So, yeah, I think – could they get to a bowl game year one? Yeah. Could they go over? Possibly. But I don't think that's a bad pick, taking the under on the Tigers. And for my pick, I've talked about this a few times with this team that I'm going to sell some stock early on. Texas A&M. Over-under set at 8.5. I think it's a return to Texas 8-4. I think Mike Elko is a very good coach. I genuinely think he's a good coach, and I think some of what he's doing from trying to build the program is good and great. And I don't even, clown them as last year being a total fluke just because of the way it ended and they didn't really beat many good teams. They were a good football team last year. I won't clown them for last season. But I've talked about this a lot. Losing 4 starters up front on that offensive line in this era terrifies me. Even when you go, and I get they brought a couple guys who were starting SEC linemen out of the portal. We see teams do that, and it does not automatically mean that you're successful up front. And that offensive line is why that offense was as good as it was. The skill talent's still there, even though, you're losing Casey Concepcion and one of the running backs, but you still have a talented backfield. Mario Craver's still there at receiver. I am not a Marcel Reed believer. I'm not big on the guy. I think when you force him to have to actually be a passer, I think he struggles mightily when he's not able to just work off play action, which I think it's going to be harder for him to work off play action when the offensive line is not mauling defenses across from them play after play like they did last season. I don't think the offense is going to suck, but I think they take a step back on that side of the ball. Plus, Colin Klein gone as OC. And no, I'm not saying Holman Wiggins can't do the job, but Klein was a pretty dang good play caller for several years, and Wiggins has not been in that spot. So what does that look like? Defensively, I like some of the pieces back, but they're losing a bunch of that defensive line. And again, replacing trenches like that when the D-line was such a big part of why they were so successful a season ago, even though they've recruited well, even though I trust Mike Elko to field a good defense, I don't think Texas A&M is going to suck, but I think they are taking a step back. And then I look at this schedule, and you have to go to LSU. At Missouri, I don't think is an automatic win. You're probably favored, but I don't think you're guaranteed to win that game. At Alabama, you're going to be an underdog. I'm not crazy high on South Carolina, but I know going on the road to that place, things happen. They are coming off a bye when they play that game, but that's not an easy road trip. Tennessee at home. I like Oklahoma quite a bit this year, so going on the road there, and then Texas at home. I think I just rattled off 6 games that I could see them losing. I'm not saying they're going 6-6, but I think this team takes a step back. I think Texas A&M is probably an 8-4 type team this season, and it's kind of a return to normalcy in Aggie land.
Yeah, I think you look at that stretch of the schedule, the 5-game stretch past the Citadel, and that's where things could go sideways if you're not careful.
This could be a classic Texas A&M schedule like we had all of those years in the Kevin Sumlin era.
That was just what I was thinking about, where they start off, they win 5 or 6 games. They beat South Carolina, somebody out of the SEC East, Arkansas, always beat Arkansas under Kevin Sumlin. You're thinking
always would go to overtime, but they would always win.
This team is so awesome. They're like a top 10 team in the country. Then they play Ole Miss, some combination of Ole Miss, Mississippi State, and Alabama, and it all goes sideways. Those were the 2016 season, too. Those Mississippi State and Ole Miss teams, not phenomenal teams either that A&M was losing to. Not
Nick
at all.
Fitzgerald, I was in attendance when Mississippi State's wearing black uniforms with the stars and stripes on them with silver helmets, and Nick Fitzgerald on the first play of State's possession goes for a 75-yard touchdown. And then I think Shea Patterson for Ole Miss ran all over him a couple of weeks later.
That was a crazy comeback win, too. I'm fairly certain, because I don't remember watching this game live, but I remember A&M was up big in that game, and then Ole Miss came back and won. And that was their one good moment they had to end the season before they got just hammered by Vanderbilt and Mississippi State to end the year.
Yeah, that was when they were crowning Shea Patterson as the next coming of Jesus. Shea Patterson is a name remember that guy.
Yeah. He was a fun quarterback.
But yeah, no, to your point, Texas A&M, they did it so many years, and the schedule sets up to do it again. And I'm not trying to hate on the Aggies, even though it's very easy to do at times, especially with that video coming out of their baseball team from the dugout. But I think Elko's a very good coach. I think they can continue to have success. I think they take a step back this year, and it's just a really tough schedule.
Yeah, they never can get that win over Texas, but if they can get a win over Texas, I'll be really impressed.
Yeah, but no, like you said, that game kind of always goes the way that it does. That'll about do it for us tonight. Gentlemen, any closing thoughts from either of you?
Watch some college basketball this weekend.
Oh, yeah. Been getting some work done on the Alabama channel, of course, just kind of getting – instead of having primetime live Tuesday night, we kind of decide we're doing a little doubleheader. I decide 6 p.m. tomorrow. Trevion and I will go live discussing the defensive lineup and what we think about Alabama's going to do against Hofstra on Friday. And the Alabama Call-In Show, 9 p.m. Central Time. Jeffrey and I take your calls on the Crimson Tide, discussing score predictions for Alabama Hofstra. And can Alabama make a huge run? I hope so, but we will see. That's why I say I hope.
Tucker, run through all your plugs where people can check out your wonderful work.
Oh, goodness. I have a handful of them right now. The problem is they're all football related, and we're in the month of March, so football content is a little bit scarce, as I have found out through not just the Voice of College Football, but all these other avenues. Vols Wire, we're starting to get some more recruiting news. I put out something today on a guy announcing Tennessee and his top schools. There's baseball. There's baseball on TV now too. It's college baseball for the moment. MLB opening day is a week from tomorrow. We'll have plenty of MLB, or at least Vols and MLB content for you over there on Vols Wire. So that's a fun part of the gig there that's coming around. Fun to keep up with former Vols and MLB. And Dan, my guy Dan Harrelson has basically been putting out like daily Tony Vitello content now that he's with the Giants. So lots to keep up with over there and the spring fling, I guess. CFBHQ on SI, we've hit a little bit of a dry patch there in terms of content. Now there's still stuff happening. It's just, it's a quieter time of year. Hopefully spring football will change some of that, but we've always got all kinds of stuff rolling out over there just on the college football landscape in general, if you'd like to check that out. And then Tennessee on the Voice of College Football. We are going to do our show again on Monday. Don't know what exactly we will be discussing on Monday other than spring practice. That's underway at Tennessee. George McIntyre has put on 20 pounds, can confirm, which is good news because he was looking like a stick when he first got to Tennessee. So we'll talk about more spring football over there. Maybe get a little bit of a basketball fix into, although non-football sports are not really Jordan's thing, though. So I kind of end up going on little monologues there and having dialogue with the viewers in the chat. So, but we'll definitely be sure to at least address any Tennessee basketball victories or shortcomings this weekend if they happen.
Oh, there you go, man. I mean, Tucker Harlan, one of the busiest men in all college football media, creating that magic on Vols Wire. Tennessee at the Voice of College Football. By the way, you've got to mention you've got upcoming 1-year anniversary coming.
I do.
Voice College Football.
Yeah, what are we, 13 days away? Next show is show 50 for us here on Tennessee, the Voice of College Football. So that's fun.
There we go.
Yeah, we're close. We're really close. Like Hugh Freeze and the Auburn basketball team to the NCAA tournament. What a coping job they've done, by the way. We didn't address that with Max, but those graphics are crazy. Man. Something out of the Butch Jones era of Tennessee football.
I have to do this in this moment because
John Cohen.
And look, did y'all see the message board Genius's post about this? There was an Auburn fan who was like, John Cohen has turned us into Mississippi State. We're the only thing we're spending on is baseball and caring about. And let me tell you about John Cohen's Mississippi State athletic department. Yes, Zach Selman has had to drag State out of the weeds in a lot of ventures. Things like NIL. I think I've mentioned it a few times on the show. State is not poor when it comes to NIL. No, we're not where some of the top SEC teams are, but we can spend on players. But we were way behind because someone did not take it seriously at all, John Cohen. And then when he did start taking it seriously, focused on his sport, baseball, and not the ones that make money. No, I love Bulldog baseball. Shout out to Brian O'Connor. But we know what pays the bills, and he was not doing that. And then when he goes to Auburn, he had the gall to talk about, I think it's just tough to go to I'm happy to go to a place right now where this NIL infrastructure is in place. You didn't do it at State, John. We're all trying to find the guy who did this. And I need to talk about Auburn hiring John Cohen. And this is, I'm going to quote, and this was Stephen Godfrey, who I know people have mixed opinions on because Godfrey will certainly take his shots. But I know he's with Yahoo, Washington Post. He talked about this on the Split Zone Duo pod a while back when the Hugh Freeze hire happened at Auburn. And it's like, how on earth did that take place? The only reason John Cohen is the AD at Auburn right now, because if you look at his tenure at Mississippi State, he did nothing at Mississippi State to suggest he should be the AD of Auburn. Like, State had a couple okay hires, but it was very hit and miss during his time. The only reason John Cohen is Auburn's AD right here in this moment is because the people at Auburn thought he would be the right type of person in charge to manage Lane Kiffin's personality after having worked with Mike Leach at Mississippi State. They thought because he could deal with Leach, who was his own guy and was going to do his own thing, he could deal with Kiffin. They hired him as AD specifically to hire one football coach.
And he didn't do that.
When he swung and missed on that coach, the list of candidates he had, Auburn was like, we're not hiring any of these people. And Auburn boosters did what Auburn boosters did and made him hire Hugh Freeze. That's the only reason he's their AD. So they have put their athletic department in this position because they were so convinced this guy will make sure we get Lane Kiffin, and he failed at that. And no offense to the Auburn people out there, I'm not trying to hate on you specifically. I'm hating on John Cohen. I've loved every minute of this. So, yeah, I had to go on.
I know I'm loving it.
I'm sure you are. But, hey, great baseball program right now, Auburn. I know you guys love that so much.
Yeah, we gladly donated you Stephen Pearl away from the Tennessee alumni base. He doesn't want to be associated with the University of Tennessee.
Oh, when I talk about Stephen Pearl, I always make sure to tell people, you gave me the warning about what kind of turd Stephen Pearl was, Tuck.
Oh yeah, he has a friendly little middle name that he likes to use when he's trying to skip lines at bars at Tennessee.
Congrats on 18 wins in your first season. Winning his first year coach in Auburn history. Such a massive.
Auburn,
the latest in their little humiliation ritual of graphics that they've been doing.
Oh, man. If Auburn keeps screwing up in basketball and football, which I'm sure they'll screw up in basketball, they're going to be like, okay, Colin, you're fired.
And, yeah, he's going to be shown the door. I guess to close this out here, to plug my own stuff, Mississippi State, the voice of college football. I'll have a call-in show tomorrow night. I think I'm just going to be – I've already said my setup is going to be different. I'm going to be on a couch, just kind of awkward angle looking at the laptop for my camera because I'm going to be watching basketball, but we'll still have a call-in show, and we'll talk some Mississippi State spring practice stuff and some thoughts on the Bulldogs in the spring. Some changes for me on the writing side. My time with Maroon and White Nation has come to an end. Loved my time riding with the Fansided Network, but it was time for me to make a move. But I am joining my friend Ethan Lee at Underdog Tribune, where I'm going to kind of get back to writing things that interest me a little bit more, some film study type stuff for the Bulldogs, kind of my niche. So going to be a lot more of that stuff coming over the offseason. If you're a Bulldog fan interested in that, some Mississippi State X's and O's, you can check out my work there going forward. But, yeah, that will do it for us tonight. We certainly appreciate everybody who tuned in and for those in the chat. If you haven't already, please leave us a like on the video. Subscribe to the channel. Make sure you go subscribe to Southeastern 16 and Max Barr and those guys. Max, it was fantastic him coming on and giving us all the insight we needed for the NCAA tournament. We will see you all next time.